I'm proud to also serve on the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, where I've had the opportunity to go to rural Pennsylvania and listen to folks and learn and be humbled by all the things I never knew living in cities. That's all I've known living in cities. I can't be an effective legislator unless I humble myself in front of people from diverse communities across our Commonwealth. So when my esteemed colleague from Franklin County says, you know, can you give us some slack and understand that we have different culture, different backgrounds, that the intent of or the impact of a bill that we might support and see value in cities may land differently elsewhere. I say to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, yeah, I agree with you, and I believe that those communities should be able to have some influence about how it lands back home. Listen, right now, I don't know how many guns anyone has in this room, legally. If you store them safely, if you hunt, if you compete, I don't really care. I don't. Any of you say, I have 100 guns. I don't care. I'm not trying to confiscate them. I don't think they should be confiscated. If they're legal, if they're safely stored, if you have the proper respect for firearms, I don't care. So if there's a way to amend bills to make rural communities understand that their rights will not be infringed, while allowing those of us who live in cities and suburbs protect our own communities in ways that make sense, then let's do that. But we have a history in this legislature saying, well, even though the majority represents exurbia and rural communities, we don't want to give any power to municipalities to protect our own in ways that make sense without impinging on what works in rural communities. So if you want us to give you slack on how this lands in rural communities, that's a conversation I really want to have. And I assure you, the 65,000 people I represent in Northwest Philly, I think would be very open to that type of flexibility. And I gotta say that many of my neighbors and constituents are law-abiding gun owners. And they would say, well, if we don't have to impose certain things on folks in rural communities and it doesn't make us any less safe, allow local control so that rural communities can do things that make sense there. But don't keep us from protecting our own in ways that make sense. If that is a legitimate concern you all have, then you should support municipalities having their own gun laws and having the flexibility, because we do represent a diverse Commonwealth. And that makes total sense. But that is not the norm in Harrisburg. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And when the majority, for years, has represented exurbia and rural Pennsylvania, and they don't allow our bills to come up to protect our own, and yet you call us lawless, and yet you say there's rampant violence, and you don't want to help us protect our own, that's when we have a problem. So if you want to have that real conversation about doing what's right for rural communities while also respecting the sovereignty of urban communities, I'm down.